Okay, so I just want to do a quick sort of overview of how things I think have gone and give you a sort of an update on where I think I'd like to sort of take this, where I'd like to sort of make the next steps. And then I'm going to ask Peter to come up and just say a few concluding remarks about what we've been doing over the last couple of days. Just one quick note on history. I'm not sure if Scotty's still here, but Scotty Chapman stood up yesterday and talked about how these other industries, goat, wine, had been through busts and booms and busts. He kind of forgot the sheep dairy history a little bit because back in '96, when the East Frisian genetics were released, there were about 10 farmers who got into sheep dairying at that point. And we, I think they didn't do so well in some areas. I think the market was probably not quite there for them. The New Zealand palate has moved dramatically over the last 20 years, and and I think if he was to look at those 10 operators and what's happened to them, obviously we've got some of the survivors, Miles, over there, and it's going to be great to see Nerdorf Dairy kicking in this coming season, back more production this year. But so that the first iteration of Blue River obviously was didn't do so well and went into receivership in 2004 for various reasons. And there were others around the New Zealand who got into it then and didn't survive. So we have had that period, and I think his lessons from the other industries are really important. But there is maybe a minor blip, but there is a boom bust element to that history. Obviously, the prehistory had a lot to do with science. That history was the one that perhaps we can reflect on if we're looking for something to do with the boom-bust cycle in agribusinesses. All right, industry. Is there an industry? Is there something called an industry? In my view, it's a term we can use. It's a sort of shortcut term for a bunch of people who, at various points, will collaborate and work together, and they'll actually compete with others themselves as well. So an industry is an interesting term. It suggests cohesion, but it also actually suggests sort of people making their own way, companies making their own way, groups making their own way as well. So that suggests to me that in terms of kind of keeping a community together, and I would refer to this as a community rather than an industry, we do need some kind of responsive structure which will help to kind of create conditions where people can work in some kind of collaborative way when they need to. When there's a need to work together, I think that's important. And over the last year, we've been running, since the last conference, we've run a monthly online meeting where we've sort of discussed this, but we've also shared information, we've had some presentations, and the recordings of those meetings have been available to those on the list. So that's been a sort of a way of keeping things rolling along. And I think I've had some really good comments about those meetings, helpful information. It's good to hear what's going on. We had a presentation from a guy called Graham Milne who was involved with Synlait, obviously, and he offers some interesting insights into various points. So I think that has helped to kind of with the continuity over the last year since the last conference. And perhaps that was enough in terms of the relation, keeping the community together. I think the conference has been really successful. It's interesting standing here when you think back 12 months when we were standing in the tent with the grass at our feet and the canvas over our head, which I think was awesome. And to some degree, and Linda and I have talked about this, I do miss the grass and the tent and the green and the blue skies outside. But I do think this venue has worked for the conference, certainly at this scale, with fantastic people supporting us all the ways around. However, I'd like to suggest that this is an important, and I'd like your comment on this, I'd like to suggest that the conference is an important venue, not just for all the fantastic presentations we've had, but also as a way in which everyone can catch up, talk, engage, sell, buy, swap information, tell them what they're doing, what hasn't worked, what has worked. And some of that's public and some of it's not. And there are conversations going on all the time through a conference which we'll remember and no one else will have heard of. So it's important to see this as not just a talk this way, it's actually a talk that way. So I think the conference has some value for going forward. But we do we do need to provide some kind of structure just to keep that going. It's come largely from my research budget, and while my university has been extremely generous both as a sponsor and also it would be nice to have kind of ongoing input from the community, members of the group, just into keeping us honest in relation to the conference. So what I'd like to propose is that I initiate the setting up of a conference organising working group. It looks like we'll probably have some money from the conference, which we'll set up a conference account. That working group will become hopefully the trustees of this thing just to run the conference. So I'm not suggesting we develop a sort of society or anything. Just briefly though, I have been reading, and you're going to think, oh my God, this guy really does, I have been reading the terms and conditions of the original New Zealand Sheep Dairy Association was set up in 1997. It's not great bedtime reading, but that was a society formed, I think, because a society was the way you ought to form things. I don't think we need necessarily a society in this instance, but what we need is some kind of structure which is going to help bring the conference together, create the kind of events that were going to be appropriate for those players at the moment. So that's what I plan to do over the next little while. I'd also like to, I seem to have some good comments back from people on this monthly meeting, so I'd like to continue that. That'll be an open meeting. I plan to do it on the basis of having sort of a speaker each month, or maybe every second month, maybe there's a way to do it, a speaker each month, so we'll have someone just do something that's going on that they want to talk about, and we'll record that and be available to everyone just to check in with. So that's kind of, in my view, enough organisation at this point. As I said, there's going to be some surplus from the conference which we'll use to fund the working group, basically some seed capital for next year. And as for next year, I'm hoping to work with some of our colleagues from across the community and invite some international speakers from other parts of the world. It's been awesome having Chaim here. Hopefully he's made a great contribution to your thinking, your development of the kinds of questions you'll be asking of your sheep and of yourselves over the next 12 months. But there are others in particular areas I think we could, as a community, could well learn from, and that's part of the things going forward. So that's my proposal to you. If anyone's got any comments on that, happy to throw the floor open now. And if there isn't any comments, then I'll hand over to Peter and he can offer some final concluding points. But just before I go, one thing, we've had an amazing support from the sponsors. I mean, Blue River have been fantastic to work with. They were so engaging and so committed to making a contribution to the conference. I think Mr. Chen was a fantastic way to start the conference. It really connected with what is an important part of what the industry is emerging into, and to Maui, which they've been fantastic. But at the other sponsors, I mean, of the Cornerstone, Agmart for being so generous again and bringing Chaim to New Zealand. Malcolm's here somewhere. Thank you, Malcolm, and your crew and your team. It's been fantastic. Massey, obviously, Ag Research, Cornerstone, and MB. MB and Ag Research, I think that session worked extremely well, and I really want to congratulate, I want to say that was a fantastic part of the conference, and long may it continue. Opus and DeLaval have been great. Hopefully you've had a chance to talk to both of them about what you're doing, and they will be high on the list of people to talk to in relation to either engineering works and consulting or dairy tech. Yeah. Okay, so that's just mention. Has anyone's got any comments at this point about the proposal?
Yeah, Craig, thank you very much. You've done a heap of work for the community over the last 12 months, and I think actually we need to give yourself and the organising committee a round of applause for putting on a really good conference and actually keeping things alive over the last 12 months. So, yeah, thanks.
Craig, yeah, thank you very much. You've done great. I've enjoyed the conference, and I've learned a lot. So it's been a success, even if it's just for me. But I did get a little bit of feedback that suggests maybe some people would actually like to comment and say, gosh, there were some things that we didn't hear about that we'd like to hear about, and that might help the organisers for next year. So if that's a good thing to do now, perhaps if we've got any feedback, people want to stick up their hands and tell us.
We're developing an online survey that I'll send out to everyone so they can make comments about it, and we'll then circulate the results. So we're developing a little evaluation survey for after the event, so you can go away, have a little think, and then put some comments down, and we'll circulate the results of that to everyone in the community, so you can see what everyone else thought. So, good. Thank you, Sam, for bringing that. It's also been part of New Zealand Agri Investment Week, which is a kind of an umbrella event that includes a number of others that are happening this week. Future Farms, the NZT Showcase. We've got events that Lucy's involved with, and obviously culminating in CD Field Days at the end of the week. So it's been, Destination Manawatu have done an awesome amount of work just to support the conference as well, and we, that's been really helpful. So that's been part of the bigger picture.
Any other comments?
Can we, sorry, Ian McDonald, can we have the conference when the RAMs are out working, and we're a little bit more relaxed?
Is there any chance of moving the conference to, say, April, when the RAMs are out working and things on the farm are a little bit more relaxed?
Some people are out, got theirs out now. As long as it's... Yeah. Timing-wise, it's been extremely important for us to have the support of others that are doing things this week, and I know that might not suit things. But just one thing, we have another workshop which is that I'll be going to, and Ian's involved with, at Lincoln starting on Friday. Chaim will be the speaker there. So that's another part of the picture which we've done this year. Guy and Sue Trafford have set up a 2-day workshop or 24-hour workshop at Lincoln, and that is an important part of developing this. They felt that the South Island was missing out. I don't know. How many South Islanders are there here? There we go. See, anyway, so we've got this workshop in Lincoln, and so we're trying to work this so that the visit speakers will actually get a chance to talk to others in other locations as well.
So I think that... So I think... Is this not working either? Hello? I think it would be great if we could just sort of get some endorsement for going forward to forming this conference organising group. So I think if you think it's a good idea to continue having an annual conference, if you put your hand up, and if we get more than sort of say half the people in the room, we'll go ahead with it. Okay, so who's for an organised conference next year? Okay, yeah, okay, good. Thank you for that. Craig, you can go ahead and organise your group. And Craig and I, we're both academics, and well, for those of you who are not academics, you can say, oh gosh, those bloody academics. So we would welcome other types of people on the organising committee. For instance, industry people, farmers, and
So if you want
cheesemakers, whatever,
We promise to have very, very short and occasional meetings just for input. That's it. Yeah. Okay, I wonder if at this point we could hand over to Peter, and we've got enough endorsement, I think.
Yeah. Unless anyone else wants to add something.
David.
I suggest that anybody who puts their hand up wanting a conference and would like to be involved in the organisation should come and report to you before they leave this room.
What an excellent idea.
Will be lost. Yeah. And if they don't, then feel free to be an academic organiser and don't apologise.
Thank you, David. Very much appreciated. Right, I know we've heard from Peter before, but Peter was, as with Joni and with Jazz, was invited to be the conference honorary guest. Now, what do you get for being the honorary guest? Well, you get a chance to say what you think, and I think Joni gave us a lot of what she thinks last night, but she did it in such a lovely, nice way. I just want to thank you, Joni, for your contribution last night. It was awesome. It was just perfect. And to David. David did an amazing job last night of reminding us of the history of where we were and where we'd come from. So thank you. But, and Jazz, I think, opened the conference very well in terms of putting out some of the challenges and some of the things going forward. But I want to turn over to Peter now. I know you've just heard from him, but he's always entertaining and always engaging. So I want to ask Peter to come forward and just close us off close the conference for us, please.
Notes down. Well, thanks, Craig. And thanks, Andy. You stole my thunder. You know, the vote of thanks is it's deserved. Well done, mate. I don't know, Craig, where you get your unwavering belief in this industry, but you know, one day this industry is going to recognise your contribution. Right now, a brief to speak at the end of the conference it's a tricky one. I'm not going to stand here and reiterate, you know, what we learned from so-and-so and what we learned from somebody else. I'm going to put forward some personal views, and we'll see what you make of that. It's been one hell of a busy 12 months. Jake and I came to this conference last year as interested observers with a strong background in genetics, thinking, this looks like a blank canvas. This looks like something really exciting. We absolutely loved starting from scratch in that deer industry and creating something really special, and we could see the opportunity to do it again in an industry that was really just starting out. So much scope for genetic improvement. So we envisaged this, you know, quiet life, running a nice, tidy little genetic program, you know, in about 2 or 3 days a week, and life would be good. And then we met Jock Ellison, and he had all his embryos, and next thing you know, we were sort of up to here in it. And then my old friend Hunter, whose father worked with us in deer improvement for the last 13 years, introduced us to Natalie, and she backed us, and she introduced us to Bill Konui, and then we got involved in that partnership, and next thing I'm responsible for the farm and working with people like Doreen here, who's been milking the sheep for us right through the season. And I think back on how much we've learned, how far we've come, because, you know, we brought a lot of relevant sort of knowledge, but you still start from scratch in an industry. And when you think about how advanced the dairy cattle industry is, and when I left, they were still arguing about how, you know, what's the best way to farm cattle and get the most out of them, quite aside from the issue of marketing the product. You know, it just boggles the mind to think how far we've still got to go. But at least we can speak with some confidence now and put together things like budgets for next year with some benchmarks that actually mean something. So it's been outstanding. And I reflect on why we're actually involved in the first place. It's obvious that New Zealand in general, and New Zealand agriculture in particular, needs diversification. It needs a higher value product, higher value per hectare. It needs more stability in the farm gate payout, and it needs something that's more environmentally sustainable. This ticks all those boxes, obviously. So does the dairy goat business. But then, by and large, they seem to have, they've filled their current demand, and they continue to grow demand, and they'll manage that very carefully, and they're doing it very well. I think we've got a couple of advantages though over the dairy goat people, in the sense that New Zealanders know how to farm sheep, and as I said before, I think this is more a dairy industry than a sheep industry, but there's still a lot of relevant knowledge there. And I think we've got a great affinity for pastoral farming, which is what we want to retain. And certainly as far as our product is concerned in Maui milk, we want to retain that. We want sheep grazing outside, you know, lovely lush green pasture of some description under a blue sky, you know, in our case next to Lake Taupo with the mountains behind. It's a very important part of our product positioning. So for Jake and I to get involved in this, coming in from the genetics perspective, and then ending up so deeply involved in farming, farm system development, and taking the product through, with plenty of help from our friends at Innovation Park, through processing and so on, it's been quite an adventure. There's nothing easy about it. I've got three boys at home, and I say to them, anything worth doing is not easy. And, you know, I was thinking about that yesterday when Jazz kicked off the conference by saying, what we do is bloody hard. And then I listened to Diane talking about, you know, the lengths that she's had to go to keep the little buggers alive and things like this. And we listened to Joni last night, and I didn't see anything easy about what was going on there in Hawke's Bay. So, this is tough, but that's where the satisfaction comes from. And when I look back on my 20-odd years in the dairy industry, all the satisfaction, it didn't come from just big numbers like 4.4 million inseminations each year. It came from creating something that wasn't there previously, like the Kiwi crossbreed or the short gestation breed or the first fresh sex semen in the world, or whatever like that. The creation of dairy improvement, that's where the satisfaction comes, and I see this as no different. I want to just pick up on a point that was made yesterday by Scotty, which we all know is incredibly important, and that is the issue of managing supply and demand. We know how important that is. You've only got to look at the dairy industry, dairy cattle industry right now, and a little bit of movement in supply relative to demand, plus or minus 10%, is the difference between $8 and $4. It's a huge difference, and so nobody argues about that. You look at the impact, on Auckland house prices just because supply and demand are out of kilter. Think about how much you'd pay for a litre of petrol if you had to. You'd pay a lot. So it reminds me of that old saying about, they say sex is like oxygen. It's no big deal as long as you're getting plenty. Supply and demand, it's so important. But, picking up on Scotty's point about not flooding the market, I see that as some way off in the future. I can tell you, before we can get involved in oversupply, first we need some supply. I mean, we're still tiny, absolutely tiny. So we've got customer demand to meet. We need a critical mass to give us some sort of presence so that we can actually, create some sort of profile, for our product. And I can tell you also that we need some efficiencies in terms of production on farm. We need more volume, and we need more farms to give us more volume to go into our products. I can tell you it's not cheap to make milk powder out of small batches. And the guys here from Innovation Park who just flew down in their private jet will explain why. But they've been tremendous help to us. But we need volume. We need volume to get some efficiency in here. The costs are enormous, which actually leads me on to the other point that Scotty made about how we need to get our costs under $1.50. I don't know anyone really in the first world environment that's milking sheep for at a cost of less than $1.50. We want to get it as low as possible, but the farmer could easily turn to Scotty and say, if you want us to get it below $1.50 so that you can ride out the commodity cycles, which we don't want anything to do with anyway, we might equally say to you, Scotty, hey, if you give us $5 a litre at the farm gate, we can ride out those droughts and things. It's it's up to both of us to push in both of those directions at once. But I can tell you what, it's not easy. I think Miles made the point when we met down here in Palmerston a few weeks ago for the Science Advisory Committee meeting. It's not easy getting sheep to milk in any volume. It's hard yakka, and it's expensive. And we can get better at it, and we know what the benchmarks are. They're all overseas, and we will get better at it. But honestly, $1.50, unlikely in my lifetime anyway. I think if we look at the Dairy Goat Cooperative, and there's a model that we could learn a lot from. I mean, they've got a system that works really well. There's goats that are putting out more than their live weight in kilos of milk solids. I mean, there are people in the dairy cattle industry that aspire to do that. There might be one or two that get there, possibly inefficiently by chasing too hard for that metric, which isn't necessarily the best one to use. But the goat people, there are a number of goat people doing that. Sheep are nowhere near it. And yet, look at what the cost of production in the dairy goat industry is. They've got a payout of about $18 kilo milk solids, discounted for the share value. I might call it 17. I think that's the sort of value that we need to be looking at for a start. Quite frankly, any less than that, and you're certainly going to struggle through the setup period. That's for real. You won't make money in the first few years if you're getting much less than that. So I think we need to be thinking about growing the industry, not blindly heading towards some sort of target that some journalist has used in the headline, like $1 billion industry or white gold or any of this sort of rubbish. Not interested in that. Look at the Dairy Goat Cooperative, look at Tātua, look at the focus on innovation and quality and added value and sustainable competitive advantage and capped supply. Waiting list at the Dairy Goat Cooperative, waiting list at Tātua, and much happier farmers than what there is elsewhere. We can manage that. There's nothing easier than sitting on a waiting list. We've got to create that demand first, and to create that demand, we need a farm system that demonstrates the level of productivity which can be profitable at a payout like $3 a litre or the equivalent $17 a kilo of milk solids. And we need to remove risk for people. So that's what I see as a key role for us, certainly in Maui Milk, is to improve the genetics and refine the farm systems and demonstrate that we have got that so that people can see there is a way forward. It's not some scratchings on the back of an envelope, it's actually real. I've been there and I've seen it and I've seen the numbers and it works. And obviously if we want to encourage additional supply, which we do, then we need to share all of that knowledge. And we would, because we can only be successful if our suppliers are successful. So forget about billion-dollar targets and so on. I'd much rather be involved in a $100 million industry than a $22 billion industry that's bleeding from the eyeballs. And we can all think of one of those. So we have a long way to go, but we need to get some volume before we start even thinking about oversupply. We need to get some efficiency and we need to make our presence felt in the market. You go to places like Shanghai and see this stunning product on the shelf and the way it's presented and so on. You have to do it right. You have to do it right to get noticed, but you need some volume to get noticed as well. It's all very well being niche. Anything we can produce, I can tell you, in the next several years is going to be niche when you look at the size of some of those markets. So what opportunities exist right now? I can't speak on behalf of the domestic market operators like Joni and Miles doing a fantastic job with some great products. We're in the market that's very much focused on export, similar to Blue River and Spring Sheep. I think Maui Milk is a little different in the sense that we are actively seeking additional milk supply right now, where the other two are not. And we also have the ability to help you breed milking ewes to become a supplier, with a focus initially at least on that sort of Taupo to Auckland region. So if you're interested in that, have a talk to us about breeding some milking sheep. And what was the theme of the conference? Let's start building momentum. Thanks very much.